Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of InRange. You may notice that Russell Fagan, a Sinister rifleman, also of KA Arms, is here with me. You're going to see him on the channel from time to time. We did a video a while back about the history of 3-gun.
Yep.
And the reason we did that is because you've been a long time competitive shooter. You've been around for a while and you have a lot of experience in that world.
Yeah, 16 years now.
16 years. So that's a lot to base things on. So what we're talking about today is something that's been around in the industry for a long time now, but I'm starting to experiment with, which is the essentially a red dot enhanced service pistol. This happens to be a Glock 19 with a Delta Point Pro on it. The slide is manufactured by KA Arms, as are a bunch of the subcomponents in here. And the reason I'm working with a KA Arms gun is because of existing industry relationships. Fagan and I have shot together in the competitive circle for, oh my gosh, 8 years, something like that. So a long time, half of your 3-gun competitive resume,
right?
And that was outside of InRange or any sort of corporate relationship. But now that I wanted to experiment with this, and since he works at KA Arms and they manufacture these things, well, we're working together to leverage your experience and your industry relationship to build one for me so I can put it through its paces and learn what the whole thing is about, because people have been really talking about these for a long time. You hear people saying they are a complete game changer, force multiplier, they change the world. You hear other people say they're completely useless and you don't need them at all. Your experience is that you have found yourself shooting better with them over time.
Correct. I was an early adopter of red dots on pistol slides back in 2010. First used it at a major match in June of 2010 at the Ironman 3-gun then, and I immediately noticed an improvement in my accuracy potential, noting that I do of course have vision limitations. I am nearsighted and I do wear corrective lenses, but I found that I was always able to shoot more accurately on smaller targets with the red dot than I ever could with iron sights. Mostly because it's a single aiming point versus 3 different planes you're looking at. You know, we're supposed to focus on the front sight with the target being blurry and the rear sight being blurry. But with the single red dot, all that becomes moot and it's much easier to shoot accurately.
Just like on a long arm, the red dot brings something to the table that changes everything. Well, you kind of touched on this already. So when you're dealing with standard iron sights, you've got your rear sight, your front sight, and the target down range. And the goal for you as a marksmanship professional is to focus on the front sight. That's what needs to be in focus, which if you have eye problems, that can be a challenge. But the problem is, even if you have perfect vision, which I happen to have, focusing on that front sight means you're not focusing on other stuff going on around you, as well as the target blurs out. So when you want to have that really precise shot or need a precise shot beyond the normal considered capable ranges of a handgun, that starts to become a problem. And what you were telling me about is that just like with a rifle, the red dot becomes just this thing that's superimposed in your field of view. Your situational awareness is improved as a result, and your ability to stay precise to longer ranges, let's say even a PCC type engagement, becomes more realistic.
Correct. The thing you don't have with the red dot pistol, you do have the PCC, is stability because there's no stock.
Yeah.
But the single aiming point, the ability to shoot with both eyes open, the ability to track moving targets better, and move and shoot are improved dramatically in my experience.
You're kind of in a middle ground, right? Because like you said, with a PCC as a long arm, you've got a stock that's in a shoulder weld, you've got a cheek weld, you've got a shoulder weld, you've got multiple points of contact to stabilize a long arm, just like you do with any other long arm. But with the pistol, by putting the red dot out there, of course, you lose those points of contact. However, you still have a sighting system that's modern and allows you to not have to focus on anything but the target down range and let that dot do the rest of the work for you.
Right.
So you lose some of that stability, but you gain some of the other advantages you have with the PCC. So on that note, I'm going to be doing this quite a bit. I'm going to be shooting this gun in a lot of handgun matches. You're going to see it in 2-gun matches. You're going to see it kind of a lot in the upcoming months on some of our match content on InRangeTV. And so one of the things we have to do to get this thing usable is we have to zero it. And there's a couple ways to do that. You can do the rough thing where you just put a piece of paper out 7 yards and back up and get it where you think you want it to be. But you actually have a ransom rest out here, and we were having a debate, or not a debate, a discussion, that if you zero it just offhand on paper, you're actually zeroing it and you're incorporating into the zero some of the maybe the negative things in your particular handgun shooting. So for example, if you happen to pull with your trigger to the right and you don't notice it, and you zero the red dot to compensate for that, you don't have a perfect zero, you have a zero that's compensating for something you're doing wrong with a handgun.
Right, and the further the distance you shoot at, the more exaggerated that mechanical imperfection becomes. So I think it's better to have a true mechanical zero to the pistol and then adjust your marksmanship techniques accordingly to minimize your imperfections in trigger pull and grip that pull you off target.
So this might be frustrating, but it's a way to become a better shooter in the long run. Kind of like when you put a laser on a gun, you can kind of see what's going wrong when you're aiming down range. Well, this is like a laser, however, it's passive versus active. And so we're going to zero my gun with the Ransom rest, which means it will have a perfect mechanical zero. The challenge may be that I may very well have some weird idiosyncrasies in my trigger pull or the way I shoot a handgun, and I'm going to have to learn to compensate for that and improve my shooting as a result of having a gun that is mechanically perfectly zeroed, but maybe not zeroed to my strangeness that I've incorporated over, 20 years of handgun shooting.
Yeah, when I started doing this, I didn't have access to a Ransom rest, so I was trying to zero off a sandbag. I tried to zero standing, and in either case, I found imperfections the further out I shot. So when we had the opportunity to purchase a Ransom rest, it was of a big benefit for zeroing and making sure that the dots were mechanically zeroed to the pistol.
To summarize, we're going to have a pistol locked in here like a vise, chalked up. We're going to have this clamping the Ransom rest to a table, and it'll be stabilized. And we're going to put the red dot pointing downrange on the paper where it should be centered, and we're going to fire it with this mechanism, and then we're going to adjust the red dot to where it hit until we have a group.
All right, so we got the dot lined up with the target. What we want to do now is level the Ransom rest with the various feet to take up any play in it so it doesn't move around when it's fired. And once we're satisfied with it being level, we use the clamp to clamp it to the table. Looks like it's pretty close right now. And the reason for this is that even with the heavy weight of the Ransom rest, it still does move when you fire it. And you want it to be able to return to the same spot on the target every time you manipulate the trigger.
Yeah, it's all about consistency. If you don't have this locked down, you're not going to have the consistency you're looking for. Yeah, it looks about right. I want to tell the audience, so when we talked about you don't have to use a Ransom rest to zero this, I would agree with that. However, this gun currently is zeroed with my extremely crude mechanisms in the desert, literally like try to shoot at a piece of steel, see where the dirt splash is, and move the dot. And I got to the point where I was consistently hitting a piece of steel plate at 20 yards. That doesn't mean that I know that this zero's right, and I knew that I was going to be doing this work with Fagan today. So it's going to be interesting to see how bad my field expedient zero is compared to what we're going to achieve with this Ransom rest. But right now I look through there, and that dot looks right on. So let's go ahead and find out what happens.
All right, so the loading procedure using the Ransom rest is you want to have the slide lock back because it has to be in an elevated position to fit the magazine into the pistol. All right, make sure the magazine's seated. Then lower the Ransom rest into position, making sure your hand's not touching the trigger actuator lever. Now we'll close the slide, and now it's ready to fire.
All right, guys, my field expedient shoot at the dirt and see where the splash is wasn't that bad considering I did it just offhand out in the desert, although it's clearly not right. Okay, we wanted to be here, and we're here. So my zero using the dirt splash is high and right. You'll see the gun printed about a little over a 2-inch group, and we're at 15 yards. This is not a match-grade barrel at this moment. It's not a match-grade gun. This is typical for a service pistol of this type with standard ammunition. So we're not too worried about that. What we don't want to do, though, is get this down here. So now, since we have a group through the Ransom rest, this is the mechanical zero of the gun right now. We can move the dot, essentially, just like we would on a rifle to where the impact was. We can lessen the amount of ammunition we use in doing that, and we should be right in the center. So we're going to tape these up. We're going to try to put the dot where these impacts were and give another group go. All right, so just like you would with a rifle, and since we're in a Ransom rest, this gun has not moved from where we fired it. Since we're back in position and we stabilized this when we started, and we do not have a magazine in here, we can go ahead and close the slide, which is what we want to do for this part of it. And make sure this is down tight, and it is. So now I'm going to get behind the dot, and I'm going to move the dot to where that impact area was. All right, I'm right in the center of the group we shot with the first 5 rounds. So now we're going to go ahead and bring the slide lock back, and then we can bring the gun up to this elevated position. We can put another magazine in, we can fire another 5-round group, and we should be, if not perfectly, at least closer to center. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 rounds. We're gonna go ahead and drop the magazine. Lock the slide back. Make sure we have an empty chamber, which we do. Bring this back up to an angle. Get this out of here, and we'll go check the target. All right, you can't ask for better than this. 4 rounds right here, literally touching the red, and 1 a little high for a service gun. Absolutely dead mechanical zero. At this point, I'm going to have no excuse when I miss stuff because I know the gun is perfectly zeroed, but am I as a shooter perfectly zeroed when I shoot it? We're going to find out in upcoming matches, but this is what you want. This is what you're looking for. Spot on. Let's go have some conclusions.
All right, so once you have your red dot zeroed, you want to witness mark your windage and elevation adjustments so you know at a glance that you have, in fact, picked up a pistol with the zero still intact from where you left it. I'm also going to witness mark the attachment screws so that if they are shooting loose, Carl can see that immediately when he loads and makes ready at a match or when he holsters up in the morning. Those little preventative things will keep your pistol operational by having you be aware of its condition on a regular basis.
All right, we now have a perfect mechanical zero on my red dot enhanced Delta Point Pro Glock 19. This means that in a ransom rest, this gun is dead on. In fact, we just showed that in the video. It's all in the red there, except 1 shot that went high, but this is a service pistol. So now any shooting that I do erroneously with this is on me as a shooter. And you came to this conclusion because you actually were using a red dot pistol before this and realized you were at a class and people were zeroing to their trigger jerks, was what you said. Is that a fair statement?
Right. As an experienced shooter, I even still pull off target a little bit sometimes, and while mine was more minimal, what I did notice when shooting other students' guns was that they were as much as a foot off target, and they were correcting their dot to that. And the further away we got, the more of an issue this became. So getting a true mechanical zero became imperative for me to get the most out of using a red dot pistol.
And I would say with like a long arm, you know, there's so many points of contact with your cheek and your shoulder and your 2 different hands that you may not have exactly a mechanical zero with a red dot on a rifle, but you're going to be pretty close. I bet you if you took a rifle that was zeroed from someone that knew what they were doing from a sandbag rest and then put it in a ransom rest, is going to be pretty close. But with a pistol, none of that exists. We were talking about that earlier. When you push out, you have, you know, your isosceles or your weaver stance or whatever you've got, but you only have single point of contact or maybe 2 with 2 hands.
Right, and the more tired your arms are, the worse it gets.
And all the stuff that we've been doing as shooters forever, however long we did it, a laser or a red dot sight will bring that out. So if for years you've been kind of yanking on the trigger and doing this yanking to the right, or as a lefty yanking to the left, or flinching, all that stuff's going to become very evident when you have a red dot zero that is a mechanical zero. If you zero it to you, you may actually mask that flinch and you'll never gain the advantage of learning that you were doing that. So when you go out with this red dot pistol mechanically zeroed, that stuff's going to become obvious, and it's a tool for you to become a better shooter. But also know that you can now hit with this gun out to distances you normally couldn't once you fix any of your shooting problems, because you truly have a real zero with a red dot on a capable pistol.
Definitely.
Yep. So you're going to offer this as a service with KE Arms. If people buy stuff from you, you'll do this in a ransom rest for them?
Correct. If they send the ammo they want us to use and the barrel they want to use, I'll get them a mechanical zero on their KE arm slide.
And let me remind people, you don't need the frame to do that. The frame is the registered is the firearm, and the slide and the barrel. The slide and barrel made up is where the accuracy and the zero is on the gun. So as long as the actual red dot and the barrel are all part of that same slide mechanism, it can go on any frame and the zero will be the same regardless. And since we're talking about mechanical zero, it's irrelevant what frame it's on.
Right, so for the sake of simplicity, all we need is their slide, their barrel, and their optic, along with the box ammo they want it zeroed with, and we can make it happen.
Think of this like an AR. So let's say you zeroed your AR with a red dot and you took your upper off and put it on another lower. It's the exact same process.
Correct.
So that's a cool thing. Now, if you didn't want to do this with KE Arms, you had someone else you wanted to work with, I would recommend doing it with a ransom rest. I saw after what I did, zeroing it in the field, that I was off quite a bit up high and right. Now that's either I was masking something I was doing wrong, or I just didn't have this precision to get it right. When we got it in the ransom rest, we now have it zeroed in perfectly, and I would have been dealing with that not insufficient, less than optimal zero in the field when I didn't need to be, and this is going to fix that problem. So if you have access to a ransom rest or can work with a manufacturer that'll do it for you in a ransom list like KE, I would highly recommend it. It did take us about 30 rounds to get this right today with a ransom rest. If you were going to do this off sandbags or in the field, it's probably a pretty ammo consumptive event.
That's why I wanted to get one of these, because I was easily spending 50 to 100 rounds without one to get a proper zero.
Yeah,
so.
and proper wasn't even as good as you probably got in the ransom rest. Is
Correct.
that fair? Yeah, so you got it better. With 100 rounds, you're like, pretty good, but not quite.
Correct.
All right, so highly recommend a ransom rest, mechanical zero, proving out your shooting skills, as well as having a zero you can depend on. So guys, if you like this kind of content, please consider supporting us on Patreon. We are a fully and a wholly viewer-supported endeavor. We accept no monetization from YouTube at all, and we're trying to bring this kind of smart, high-end gun-related content to our audience. If you can't do that, maybe you already are, and we thank you for that. If you can't do that, subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, share this with your friends. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Full30, VidMe, Twitter, and Instagram. catch it all. I'm pretty active on Facebook too. So I want to thank Fagan for doing this today and getting us a hold of this gun so we can put this red dot thing through the test, and we're going to see in future videos how well it works out. Thanks for watching.